There's a way you can explain anything to anyone and make it not only make sense, but make it come alive. And I try to do that with astrology. Like, what do you care about? Do you care about the moon being in your 7th house, or do you care about the fact that you want to raise your daughter to feel great about her schooling and self-esteem, that you want a home that you can relax in after working all day, that you want a career that's fulfilling, that you want this relationship to work, but you can't get past a communication difference, and you'd give anything to solve that. That's what people care about. So we took the time to create a system and write about this amazing tool and shortcut that we've used in a way that could help people do that, hopefully.
Welcome to the House of JerMar podcast, where wellness starts within. The House of JerMar is a lifestyle brand empowering women to live all in through interior design and personal wellness. We are a destination for women ready to reimagine what is possible in their homes and lives and then create it. We are honored to have you join us on our mission to empower 1 million women to live all in. I am your host, Jean Collins, and I invite you to become inspired. Welcome to the House of JerMar podcast, where wellness starts within. I'm your host, Jean Collins, and today we are talking about astrology. This guest is so special. You guys are definitely going to want to stick around for this. Not only are you going to learn, I assure you, you are going to laugh. So Ophira Edut. We're going to go with Ophi because that's what I call her. She has a beautiful name, though. She has written a book called Astrology Advantage, and her sister, they're the Astro Twins. You can find them on Instagram. They have written so many books. These guys are the astrologers and intuitive advisors of all time, like to the stars, folks, to Beyonce. It is so exciting. Her resume and her bio is so impressive. I am not going to read it all, so you're going to have to read it in the show notes. But Ophi has done so much, and I am so excited to have you on the show. And I read her book, and I have to tell you, I laughed so hard. So get ready, everybody. Ophi, welcome to the House of JerMar podcast.
Oh, hi. I love it.
I am so excited to have you on this show. So just so people know, I got introduced to Ophi because I'm working on a TEDx talk, and she's part of the team that is helping me with that. And the more we got to know each other, the more we found that we overlapped on all these different things, and we knew similar people. We had some different connections. We were interested in similar things. We're interested in astrology and personal growth and mindset and all of these great subjects. And so the more I kind of dug into Ophi, searching for her online, the more I was like, oh my goodness, you are just so cool, and I would love to have you as a guest. And so she offered to say yes. So thank you.
Oh my God, I'm honored. Thank you. It was so fun working on your TED Talk. I mean, interior design is one of my personal, wish I had the talent, love it, love admiring it. So mutual admiration society here.
There you go. All right. So you wrote a book, Astrology Advantage. You and your sister, you've written so many books. Let's give us a high level about you two. How did you get into astrology, and what do you do?
Okay. My twin sister and I are accidental astrologers, I like to say. We went to the University of Michigan. We ended up in art school, both of us. I considered engineering as a pathway too, because we were both good at math and science, but ended up doing art. And while there, my college boyfriend gave me a birthday present for my 21st birthday of my full birth chart. I had started to get intrigued by astrology when a cool New York student friend of ours had come to Michigan with all her knowledge of things like her chart. And I was like, what is that? So this was the early 90s. So I would, look at bookstores and, go and read the Sagittarius book at Barnes and Noble. But when I got my full chart, it was this printed 30-page document that described all these facets of my personality, every planet in my chart. There are 13 main points. And that's when it really was like, oh, this is more than just that's interesting. This is has someone been spying on me? So I had a side hustle in the IT department at Michigan and found a piece of software. It was me and one other woman there and a bunch of dudes. And she and I were both into astrology. So she gave me this little chart making software that I put on my computer and started doing my friends and reading what it meant out of a book. And down the rabbit hole we went. I had a career in publishing, women's media. I worked for Gloria Steinem and at various magazines. And I would do editors' charts for fun, or to procrastinate on a deadline. And one of those editors ended up offering us the astrology column at Teen People magazine in early 2000s. I think it was 01 or 02. And I just that's where it all went. From there, books, columns, chart readings, Beyonce's first reading at the Billboard Awards, and on and on and on. There's no bottom here. So I just have kept going with it. 25 years later, I'm still doing it.
Now, how did your sister get involved? Did you start first?
It wasn't a hard sell. We've always had businesses together since we were kids. Like since we were probably 8 years old. I mean, having read your book, I know, when you don't have money to buy the jeans that everybody else is wearing, you have to figure out how to get it. So we started working at an early age, paper route, babysitting, dog walking, calligraphy, whatever we could come up with to get paid for. And so when I showed her the chart, because we have the same chart, she was fascinated too. And we both started exploring it. And we were always making things, making our own books or publishing or combining writing and art. So I think at a certain point, we both decided we wanted to learn HTML in the mid 90s. And so we both used astrology as the subject matter to build practice websites. And I think that was everything just kind of grows. It's like a house, like what I know, like actually it's like a house without an interior designer where you build one wing and then you decide you want another one and then you build it, but it's in all these different
There's no big plan. Right. You don't have a big plan. You're just going step by step, building as you go.
Yeah. So if my business was a house, you would be like, why is there a mid-century modern part with a Victorian area with another? But we just kind of follow what comes our way that sounds interesting and build from there.
That is so interesting. So you live in New York and she lives on the other side of the country?
Yep, she's in Seattle and then she comes back and forth to New York too. So we we have a bi-coastal twin life.
Right. So this is a side tangent, but I am so curious. How do you write a book with somebody else?
Yeah, people ask us that a lot. We can actually write in such a way that you might not know who wrote it. I think there's a slight difference. She's a little more flowery and fashiony than I am. Thank God somebody is. She picks up my clothes for me too. I let her shop for me. But yeah, we have like a kind of a third twin shared brain, I think. And we'll divide stuff up. Like I'll write this part, you write that part, and then we kind of package it together. So it's not easy because I think probably a lot of people do have very different styles, but I think writers can find a kind of a brand voice too that they write to. So lots of practice. Yeah.
Now, have you guys written all 20 of your books together?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, some years I've written more and she's edited. Other years, sometimes we divide them up. But yeah, with this Astrology Advantage we did together for sure.
Do you ever argue about a subject? Like, are you guys normal twins that do disagree? Or no, you're just like the perfect twins that get along about everything?
No, we're not the Shining Twins, and we're somewhere between the Shining Twins and the Full House Twins, we God, that was really not going to be that's not going in my brand book right there. We are nothing like the Shining Twins, so relax everyone, but we have our healthy disagreements. We have a few fist fights in our past. It was usually over like a shared piece of clothing that one of us wanted to wear. But yeah, we're not afraid to disagree. I think sometimes like when we do, like there are certain areas we'll polarize on. Usually one of us wants to do something really risky and the other one wants to play it safe. And then when we do that, when we kind of like polarize in front of our team, we have like a core team of about 5 people. I'm like, oh God, I can see the beads of sweat trickling. Like, they're like, here comes a twin fight. Uh-oh.
That makes you real. I'm so glad to hear that. Because sometimes it's projected out into the world like, you guys just get along great with everything and you produce all this combined content. And it's hard enough to produce content by yourself, let alone when you're representing 2 people in a brand. That's very challenging.
It is. And yes, we've written 22 books, but we've been doing this for 30 years. So it's like an average of like a book every year or so. So, I mean, I know that still sounds a little far-fetched, but
excuse me, a book a year? All right, folks. They're like, yeah, okay, that's a lot. It's really hard. It's hard to write a book. And this is not some like tiny little book that you got here, right? Like, we're going to show. This is a serious book, folks. Notice all the pages that I folded down. Like, this is a real book, by the way, published by a real publisher, Simon & Schuster. So like, this is no joke here. This is not your just self-published little softback 150 pages here. This
you know
is
what, though?
Book.
Many of my books are self-published, and I am a huge advocate for self-publishing because actually, and I'm not going to divert too much here, but honestly, our first few books, my very first book was an independent publisher. Then I had a few big publishers. But at the end of the day, big publisher or self-published, you end up doing a lot of the marketing and platform building yourself. Big publishers are printers and distributors. And if you're lucky, a great editor weighs in. But I am a huge champion and proponent for self-publishing. And I think self-published books are every bit as real and legitimate as others. So that's my
thank you for that
box there.
That I do. Thank you for that, since I self-published my book. So, and I do know I've heard you speak before. I know you're a proponent of both. So thank you. All right. We have to get into your book because, folks, this book is so exciting. So let's go back to the basics. Can you explain to people, you talked about the 13 areas, you talked about astrology. Like, what is astrology? What are those 13 areas? And how did you come up with your I am, which is your system here, your I am system? How did you come up with that?
Yeah. Astrology as we use it, it's a tool. It's not a belief system. It's not an ism. It's a tool. It's a map of the relationship of the planets in the sky related to where you or an event is happening, where you were born, where you are right now on this planet. So your astrology chart, your birth chart, is almost like a screenshot of the sky overhead at your exact time, date, and location of birth. If you were to look up at the sky and take a screenshot of it or a selfie of it, of all the planets arranged, they'd be forming a pattern. And that is actually the instruction manual or the roadmap that all human beings come with. You may not know your time of birth depending on where you were born, but it happened. So, and I think of it as like when the soul enters the body and incarnates and is like, okay, have a nice adventure. Here's your roadmap, pass, go. Don't lose boardwalk, but that's up to you. You have to then go in with this map and you have a lot of free will to make decisions. So that's another myth about astrology, that it's deterministic and you have no free will. It's not at all. It's like a cheat code to life. It's like a GPS in your car. So I have been writing it, learning it, and then doing readings for people over the years to explain their charts, which takes a good 90 minutes to 2 hours to do properly. And then we started doing group coaching and classes, and over time just came to realize like this is the best thing ever and the worst thing ever, astrology, because it's so accurate, so true. People want to use it, but it's so hard to remember. It has a marketing problem. It has a retention problem. And I'm a very efficient,
it has a brand issue. Astrology has a brand problem. It does. Yeah. It needs brand builders group for sure.
It really does. So, my convergence of being an art school student who studied publishing and branding and graphic design and interest in astrology is like, I am a very practical, efficient person, and my sister is too. So we're like, how can we make this something that people can really use? So we had a group of entrepreneurs that we were coaching. We called them Astropreneurs. And we leaned into an astrology shortcut that's called the chart dominance. And what that means is the dominant kind of essence or element of your chart, much like a personality test, like an Enneagram or a Strengths Finder, that kind of thing. Astrology has that too. And what you do is you count up out of the 13 main points. That's what we chose to use. Your sun sign, that's your zodiac sign, but you also have a moon sign, a rising sign, a Mercury sign, all the planets, and then 2 points called the north and south node. So what you do is you look at how many of those, or the distribution of those in a chart in what are called cardinal, fixed, and mutable signs. It's already a lot of astro jargon here, but essentially the zodiac is divided up into 12 signs. It's also divided into 4 elements, subdivided: fire, earth, air, and water. You may have heard of that, right?
Yep.
You know you're a
I did.
Leo, you know you're a fire sign, right?
Yep.
So most people know that.
Yes.
But there's another part called the modes, the modalities. And that really gives you kind of like your personality test astrology. If you have planets in Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, those are the cardinal signs, and we rename them the Innovators. They're the ones that start every season, and therefore they're the pioneers, trailblazers, visionaries. And then there's a group of 4 in the middle of every season: Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, called the fixed signs because they're rooted, they're the stabilizers, the builders, and we name those the authorities. And then the third group are the mutable signs, the transition teams, the community builders, the communicators. They take the thing that the innovators created, the authorities standardized and produced, and then they share. They're the marketers. They share it with the world, bring people together, connect the dots, and we call them the Mavens. And those are Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. So Innovator, Authority, Maven, IAM, the IAM system. That was intentional, but it actually came to me in like a journaling session at 1 a.m. during a major planetary transit, which, by the way, we're having one right as we record this.
Wow.
Pluto is going into Aquarius for 20 years, leaving a sign it's been in for 16 years today as we record. So to
me, that just feels crazy to even wrap my head around that concept about astrology and the planets and everything. But
yep, there are big historical cycles we'll get into another time.
Yeah, exactly. That's a whole other conversation. But I didn't even realize. So, I mean, it's the IAM system. I did not connect the dots with the IAM being the Innovator, Authority, and Maven. I totally missed that.
That's okay. Wow. It's a new packaging of something that's been part of astrology for a long time, and I believe is underutilized. And even when people utilize it, they say, for example, my sun's sign, my zodiac sign is Sagittarius, which is one of the Mavens. But when I look at the 13 points in my chart, I'm 6 Innovator, 4 Authority, and 3 Mavens. I'm actually the lowest in the one that my sun sign is in. I'm an Innovator, and it just makes sense because while I am very much my zodiac sign, the way I do things, the how, can be found in the Innovator. And I know you're one of the hybrids. You're the Authority Maven, right?
Here's what's interesting. We're going to talk about mine. Okay, so you have 13 points, right? So you go onto your website, you put in where you were born, the time you were born, and the day you were born, and it spits out of those 13 where they fall into these 3 categories. And so you can have, like Ophi just said, you're like a 6, of 4, and a 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a 5, 4, and a 4. So I'm a 5 for authority. So 5 of the traits. So that's the highest one, was the authority. And then I'm a 4 for an innovator and a 4 for Maven. And when I started this, and I started just like skipping ahead into the book, and I was like, I'm an innovator. I was like, I'm an innovator. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an innovator. And I'm reading about the innovator, and I'm like, yes, that's me. And then I look at it and I was like, oh, according to this, that's not my most dominant. It's close because it's a 4 and a 5
Yes.
for authority. So it's close. So then I started reading. I was like, oh, this must be so wrong. But I was like, okay, I'm going with it. I'm gonna lean in and trust. So then I started reading about the authority and I was like, oh no, that is me to a T. Like to a T.
Totally.
Like absolutely to a T. And I will just tell people so that they absolutely read this book. At first, I was so intimidated by the book. You have written the book in the most simplistic way to understand how these 3 different I am, what we call them, systems, sections, people,
Types.
whatever you want to call them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How they relate to every single facet of life. So work, personal relationships, dating. I was laughing hysterically on the dating one because an authority for dating. So anyone who knows me, I've been single for 17 years. Okay.
Right.
And finally I'm not single. But one of my challenges with dating was that my checklist, and you even talk about this in the book, this is me, my checklist for a potential person just to date is really long and really deep. And the bar is really high. And so people never even get past like date 2. And you even talk about how that is my personality, is to have this very specific checklist of all these things that I want and these very specific requirements. And I was reading it. I am absolutely laughing. I'm like, that's why so many of those guys never made it past date 2.
Yep.
Like, there it is. There it is. It was so funny. But you also talk in the book about understanding the different traits of the others, if you're not strong in them, and how you can somehow balance yourself out a little bit by understanding your strengths, and let's not even call them weaknesses, just your areas of opportunity, and how you can tap into that, and how you can also have better communication with your spouse, how you can parent, how you can become a better leader for teams, understanding work environments that people thrive in based on where they are in this chart. It was, folks, fascinating. Easy read and so funny. So funny. So did you set out to make it funny, or are you guys just funny?
Hopefully both, but absolutely. That is so that's one of my criticisms of astrology and many astrologers. It's missing a sense of humor about itself and about ourselves. I mean, that's my criticism of most people. It's like, lighten up, I think because astrologers have I didn't set out to be an astrologer, so I don't have any like ego attached to it. I know I could, this is an accident. So I think that for some people, they're very like, they feel, not seen because it's gotten the eye rolls. And in the 20th century, mass media made it kind of like into this carnival act. But it's actually a very serious, I guess, study. So, but even if it is, doesn't mean you have to be so uptight about it. I like things that are practical and fun. And I think that we learn more and embrace things more when we're having fun and play. And I know that that's your approach too, about playing with fabrics and wallpapers, and that there are some parts of the learning process that are harder than others. But we just wanted to make it accessible to anyone. So many people would be like, I can't remember this, but I want to use it. I want to use the advantages of it. And that's why we named it the Astrology Advantage. One of our students said that. She said, I just want to get the Astrology Advantage, not master my chart. That's what I have you for. Right. You'll remember it.
Right. So. Yes. Right. Understand the high level of how we function and how to best communicate with others.
Yeah. And when
you do, even for me as an interior designer, which I loved, you do even have a section that talks about your home.
Yeah.
And how your home is organized and the energy of your home based on where you are within this. And so as an interior designer, I was so happy to read that you included the home environment.
Good. Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, that's so me, and it was interesting for me as an authority. You talked about how you need to have doors and you need to have closed spaces. And I do have some open space, but it was so interesting because I was like, yes, I do. Like my office is like over there with a door, and my living room is over there, and it has its designated spots. And it's really beautiful since I'm an interior designer, but yet it's really welcoming. And I felt like you were like taking my home and writing as if you were standing in my house, writing about my house.
Cool.
It was great. I was like, that is my home. You're right.
But that is really, thank you for saying that, because that really is one of my missions with astrology or anything I write or talk about or teach about. And I'm sure for you too, it's like, if this doesn't make sense to the person or feel like it matters to them personally, why even talk about it? You're wasting everyone's time. I mean, there are so many subjects, whether it's astrology or AI or math and science, for example. I had this incredible female chemistry teacher, Mrs. Judy Corsini. Shout out to her in Detroit in 11th grade. And she was also the psychology teacher. So she taught chemistry by personifying the periodic table of elements. And I think she was a huge inspiration. And I would literally voluntarily stay after school to do my homework with her because it was so fascinating to me. And so I learned at that age that a subject that seemed intimidating could become almost like, hydrogen peroxide. You're my best friend, and not because of my acne. So not because I have to clean out my newly pierced earrings, right. But it was like, okay, there's a way you can explain anything to anyone and make it not only make sense, but make it come alive. And I try to do that with astrology. Like, what do you care about? Do you care about the moon being in your 7th house? Or do you care about the fact that you want to raise your daughter to feel great about her schooling and self-esteem, that you want a home that you can relax in after working all day, that you want a career that's fulfilling, that you want this relationship to work, but you can't get past a communication difference, and you'd give anything to solve that. That's what people care about. So we took the time to create a system and write about this amazing tool and shortcut that we've used in a way that could help people do that, hopefully.
Yes. And communication comes up a lot in the book.
Yeah.
You talk a lot about communication. So talk to me a little bit about communication, and how did you write so much about the 3 different traits and communication, especially when you are strongly and predominantly one of them? Like, you're on the one side, you're not living the other 2. You guys are both very dominant on one. So how did you write so much about communication? Because that is a big one. In every facet of life, communication matters, and you talk about it in every single section.
I think it's science is defined as a hypothesis matched with observation, basically. So I have probably done thousands of people's charts and observed their traits, or looked at celebrities and historical figures and just observed the common traits, matching it to what I knew and know and learned. And it's like you would probably go into a certain type of house and know, even if I'd love to put wallpaper on this, it's really going to probably start to feel confining if I do that. The thing that probably will feel best for this architectural style is this type of design. And we can still add in the personality and the vibe that the person wants. But if I try to make a craftsman into a Victorian, we might not get what we want. It might feel weird. So observing, we have a team, we have people from each of the I am types, and just seeing how they responded to instructions. For example, our authorities need things bulleted out, spelled out. They need to know when it's due and how. The innovators want to go and work on their own time and place. The Maven is just like, I've got this. I'm going to manage everyone and talk to everybody. So just seeing how people are happiest and most fulfilled. My own experience of trying to find fulfillment. It wasn't just what I did for a living, it was how I did it. When I had my first job, when Gloria Steinem recruited me to work at Ms. Magazine, I was 27, and I had only worked for myself prior. And it was an honor to get the job, but as an innovator, it was hell for me to have to come into an office every day, interrupt my coffee buzz and my moment of inspiration just so I could follow the rules that everyone else was. Whereas for other people, that would give them security and stability and certainty. So just a lot of observation is a short answer.
Yeah. No, but that's good though. You know what? I always say your life experience is more powerful than your education, and you having the life experience of how this can apply and seeing it in action with your team is so interesting.
Yeah.
And I will say, so I have a question. It's a totally different subject, but I was fascinated by this. So you guys have Instagram, right? Astro
Mhm.
Twins. Am I getting that right?
Mhm.
Astro Twins,
Yes,
right?
that's it.
Yes. Okay. Um, and you use this method and you used it during the election. You used this method to explain how candidates and how people behave. And
Yeah.
was that well received? Was
Yeah.
that, yeah, it was. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. And what made you decide to do that? Because that is a little bit risky, I will say, when we when we poke
Yeah.
at public figures, right? Especially politicians, that can be a little bit risky. You're not Saturday Night Live, so it might not come across as being quite so funny. However,
Yeah.
you guys did make it really funny. You made it factual and really funny. So how did you decide that that was content you wanted to put out?
We have agonized over this for years and years because there are people that will be like, stay in your lane, don't bring politics into astrology. But I
Yeah.
believe, I think it was Gloria Steinem who said that the personal is political. I say it, and the planetary is too. And of course, it's 11:11 as I say that. I love it.
Oh,
So
I love it.
sorry, I'm being woo woo here, but
I love the woo woo. Oh,
we
11:11
love
is
the
my
woo.
favorite. I see it. I do manage to see 11:11 once a day, whether
Oh,
it's morning or
awesome.
night, every single day.
See, the universe speaks to you, and we don't
It
know
does.
why or how or exactly what it means, but it does. And so, yeah, I think with talking about what's happening on this planet, we're actually doing an initiative in 2025 that we're calling This Planet 2, where we're working with sustainable brands and just reminding people, hey, we're looking at all these other planets, but let's take care of the one we live on with everything that's going on. So we know that we have people, our audience is probably mostly, I don't even know anymore. I'm not going to even say, I don't even know
Right.
who
Right.
does what after this last election. But we were like, how can we take a 30,000 foot view, still not be like so unbiased that we're robots here, but base it on as much accurate news and just an observation. Like, so, Kamala Harris is a maven. Joe Biden is an authority. So she was kind of the maven on mute, as we said, and
Right.
he was in charge. So she didn't really have much of a voice until he stepped aside. Donald Trump is a hybrid. He's the innovator maven, which is kind of this ringmaster, masterful marketer. And they did, they, whether you love them or hate them, they were truly exemplifying their type. And so we just thought that would be a way that people could get a little bit of emotional distance from this, observe it. We don't know why things are happening on the planet. I see the planet's in the middle of a giant iOS update right now.
I'm curious to see how that lands.
Yeah, I don't know what system software is downloading, and when I restart, when we reboot our phones, and is it a little scary? Is it very scary for some people? Yes. People
Right.
ask me, you guys knew that Donald Trump was going to win. You just didn't want to say it, right? It's like from a chart perspective, he had a much better chance, but I still believe that we have to I believe that intention has more power than anything at all. So I didn't want to influence. I just wanted people to be able to observe for themselves and give them another lens as much as possible. I knew who I wanted to win, but
Right.
I tried not to overly say that.
Right. Well, I thought it was really interesting, and I thought you guys did a good job because you took the concepts of your book and applied them to people that are very public so that people could relate to the concepts of the book because they see that public persona, which makes the book very relatable for anyone who hasn't actually read it. But once you start reading it, you totally get it because it's yourself all in the book. But I thought you guys did a really good job of taking these public figures and translating the astrology tools to their personas, and we could really relate to what you were saying. So congratulations. I thought you did a
Thank
nice
you.
job with that.
I mean,
Yeah.
storytelling is how we learn. That's why I love your book, because you bravely shared so many stories as Leos My mother's a Leo, so they have this open-hearted quality where they're willing to share their lives and
Yes.
help others with that. I'm much more shy about my own life, but I have a lot of other people's stories at least, and I think that's that's what really I want people to feel like they had some sort of a healing or validation. The laughter is the laughter of recognition. Like, oh, okay, I'm not messed up. I am this way for a reason. I do have a long checklist for dating, and I was single for all those years, and maybe I was a serial monogamous for other years, and that's kind of the
Right.
way I'm designed. But once you
Yeah.
know that, you also
Yeah.
gain free will. You can say, all right, that's how I am made. But maybe knowing that now I can say, but I don't really want to do that anymore. So I'm going to learn something new while honoring that that's kind of in my spiritual DNA. And I can maybe only fight it so much, but I can find ways to strengthen these other muscles.
Which is really interesting. It is because you can see, I mean, everyone, I would like most people, and you talk about this in the book, most people have parts of all three. It's very rare that someone doesn't have one of these three. So
Right.
we all have parts of this in us. It's just a
Mm-hmm.
matter of how strong are they and how strong are your numbers in each one of them. And also, I also felt like it for different sections of life, you might be stronger in different sections of life. So in a work
True.
environment, I might be, I mean, clearly from a dating environment, I was like spot on. This is me. This is my checklist. When we got to the self-care routines, you write about the self-care routines and how, I need like my own bathroom because I have my routines, I have
Oh,
my
yes.
rituals, I have my salt stone. And I was like, oh my goodness, that is so me. Like my boyfriend's like, there's this whole thing that has to happen at night. You put your feet on the Himalayan salt lamp and you've got your red light and like there's a whole routine. And every night the routine happens, just like every morning for me, the routine happens. And I talk about this a lot, the importance of routine. And while I'm reading it, I was like, oh, for someone like me with my personality traits, the importance of my morning routine, that's part of why these routines are so important. And so in some areas, I was like, that is so spot on. And in other areas, I was like, yes, but I sway a little bit here. So it's interesting to see
Yeah.
how you sway from different traits in different facets of life. So I love that your book covered really anything you could think of for life and relationships and jobs and health, and which was
Yeah.
really cool. My question for you is, of all these areas of life, what have you found? How have you found this information the most impactful? So is there like one area of your life where understanding this about yourself has really changed you and made that facet of your life better?
Yeah. I mean, I think just the way I spend my time because I'm this overachiever, but yet I'm also a total rebel against structures, except for the ones I give myself. And I don't, it's funny because when I was editing your TED talk, there would be times where I'd be like adding in another way of doing things because you had like, and this is how it works. And I'd be like,
Yeah.
I'm not surprised you're an authority because I was like, I bet it does. But then there's these other types
Right. But
that
then
do
there's another
things
way.
differently that are like, that wouldn't work for me because I can't stick to a routine without feeling suppressed. Whereas it gives someone, so that is what I have found the most is like, trying to create a lifestyle where it's very flowy. So I have all these like lovely friends, many authorities who are like always concerned, you work all the time, Ophi. I'm like, I actually don't. I just kind of weave in and out of it in this way that works for me. So they're
Yeah.
worried about me because they think all I do is work. I'm like, no, you don't see the breaks I take all day or how like I love going to find the perfect spot to sit at or cafe, taking out that's my ritual. Take out my laptop, let the coffee hit, download the ideas. I'm an innovator. My joy is like letting the divine downloads kind of come in. And so I have to create the perfect space and environment. So I might actually be taking an hour to get myself set up. And that's my self-care ritual,
Right.
like
Yep.
finding the spot, ordering the food, etc. So honoring that in myself instead of like comparing myself to a standard of how we've been told works and what does work for many people. But there are so many people who are quiet quitting or actually quitting their jobs because they don't want to follow those routines. So honoring my rhythms and routines and trusting myself and that the way I'm doing it if it's getting the effect that I need and nobody's getting hurt or trampled on or inconvenienced, then why not?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. All right, we're running out of time because I've taken so much of your time. I could talk to you for hours
Oh my
about this.
God,
We
and
could
we
do like
will.
the deepest dive about, the different me as an authority and all the different categories. So we could do a deep, deep dive, folks. But I do want to talk about two different things. So one, people like you, I've always found who are high innovators, high entrepreneurs, very super creative. They always have so many ideas, and there is always the next book and the next business and the next this. So what is on your bucket list, both personally and professionally? Because I know your brain is constantly creating and developing new things. So what is on that bucket list for you?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I've learned about myself from being high innovator is like stop, slow down, and make one of the things that you've done into something. So, there was always astrology is like there's always tomorrow. Okay, that horoscope is done. What's happening next year, next month, next this? And so what I'm really excited about is to lean into my 4 authority placements with the Astrology Advantage and develop the I am system because, so many places use Myers-Briggs, but what a lot of people don't know is Myers-Briggs was created by a mother and daughter in Michigan, where I'm from, who found Carl Jung. The mother wrote erotic fiction about him and then became pen pals with him. And Jung's archetypes are based on astrology too. So here we are using this corporate system and being like, this is a peer-reviewed, blah, blah, blah. No, it's actually a personality test and it's corporate astrology. So what I'm finding more and more is that the wellness world and the work and corporate world have overlapped. They've merged. There's a Venn diagram effect. And I know you found this too. Yeah. And I'm really excited about it, that we don't have to split ourselves into personal me, professional me. So there is a contingency. And yes, many of them are women, but men love it too. It's just, the women have been trained to be open to it or accepted to be open to it. But there are a large number of people that want to use astrology and spirituality and meditation and design and all the things that make us feel good on this planet in their career. And just they want to have that holistic life that you talk about where where everything comes together. So I'm excited to build out the whole I am system, and we have what we're calling the I am Institute. So we're going to have longer reports for people and videos and trainings and that kind of thing, and just make more of this and make it accessible to people for their work and life and family and relationships and happiness.
Well, I will be one of your first clients because I was reading the book and I was like, wait, but I want to know so much more. And I went to the website and I was like, but that's not there. I know. And I was like, I have all these other questions and so many other things I want to understand. And so I'm so excited that you're digging in deeper, because I will happily sign up as your first client for that.
Oh my God, awesome.
There's so much more I want to know. So much more. All right. So before we go, I always ask all my guests if there's a book that they could recommend other than their own, obviously, which has impacted them personally or professionally that they think everyone should read. So what book would you like to recommend?
Yeah. One I found this year, I was inclined to say The Artist's Way, but probably everybody recommends that one. So love that one.
It's a great one.
The one that I love this year is called Oversubscribed. And by Daniel Priestley. And it is about how to take yourself from being someone who's kind of struggling to be seen and known and get those Instagram numbers up beyond your mom and your best friends, and become that girl who, that woman who, that guy who, like, become perceived as a public figure in people's minds. So he has a concept in it called 7-11-4 that I've been following and will continue to. And I just think it's anyone. You probably have a lot of entrepreneurial people on here.
I do.
Or just people who are like, I just don't want to work at this job forever. I want to do something that makes me happy. How do I get recognized in this crowded marketplace? How could I possibly do that? So oversubscribed is a way of looking at your offerings and the way you package them and just showing them differently and what you have to do. It gave me hope. I used it for just my starting the road to getting the Astrology Advantage and the IM system out there. It gave me patience. I was like, all right, what's my 5-year plan? A very authority question. So
Yeah.
I love that book and I recommend it.
I am ordering that today.
Okay,
Because
good.
that
We'll have
sounds like
a
you
book
are
club.
talking to me and I need to read that book. So I am ordering that today. I'm going on vacation in 2 days. So hopefully Amazon will deliver it and I will take it with me.
Oh,
That is so
perfect.
great. Ophi, I'm going to have you back as you expand I'm going to have you back so you can talk about the I Am Institute and we could talk for so long. So I thank you so much. Your energy is so incredible. Your book, truly hysterical, a wealth of knowledge. I am so excited to share it with everybody. And you made poking fun at me for some of my nuances just really funny. And I appreciate that. You really did. Like I am the person in there. You literally described me, the person who will pay $198 for a t-shirt, and I will. And I was like, oh my goodness, you normalized that I would do that and the why I would do that and how that aligns with my personality trait. And so I can't thank you enough. You made me laugh. I learned so much from your book and I find your energy just so inspiring. So thank you for taking the time to be a guest on the show. And I will link everything in the show notes so people can find you, they can follow you, and they can buy your book. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jean.
Have a great day. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the House of JerMar podcast, where wellness starts within. We appreciate you being a part of our community and hope you felt inspired and motivated by our guest. If you enjoyed this episode, please write us a review and share it with friends. Building our reach on YouTube and Apple Podcasts will help us get closer to our mission to empower 1 million women to live all in. You can also follow us on Instagram at House of JerMar and sign up to be a part of our monthly inspiration newsletter through our website, houseofjermar.com. If you or someone you know would be a good guest on the show, please reach out to us at podcast@houseofjermar.com. This has been a House of JerMar production with your host, Jean Collins. Thank you for joining our house.